In Exponential, we have one big idea: how you and your friends can start a missional church movement. In this chapter, we explain how an individual can expand their influence from being one person to actually a whole movement. They move from an individual who's then an apprentice, and then a leader, and then a coach, and then a director, and then maybe a campus pastor, a church planner, to eventually a network leader, maybe even a movement leader. We call that the leadership path.
It was about 15 years ago when my wife Janet and I moved back to Chicago from Atlanta, Georgia. I was working for General Mills. We got connected back into Community Christian Church. And as we were attending church, got invited to a small group that was led by Dave Ferguson, the lead pastor. He and I had been friends for a number of years, even before we'd moved to Atlanta. And so he invited me to be a small group apprentice. And it was there we'd spend time in the group and outside the group. And through that relationship, he encouraged me to start my own small group. And as I went from that small group apprentice to launching my own small group, he began to cast a vision for the future. What would it look like if I would be able to leave my corporate job with General Mills and go on staff at Community Christian Church? Well, I continued to grow in my influence. I reproduced a small group apprentice myself, and started another small group and became a small group coach. At that point in time, when David asked me if I would leave my job, I was lots of reservations, but prayed through it with my wife Janet, and ultimately came to the point where if we didn't take this risk to leave my corporate job to go into vocational ministry, we would always wonder, what if? What if? And we made a commitment to each other before we ever got married that we wouldn't live a life of regrets. And so the decision became apparent. Not easy, but clear. And so we began to come on staff as the pastor of administration and involvement at Community Christian Church, and still investing in other leaders in a variety of ministry, both with facilities and finances and first impressions. And then was able to, as we made preparations to launch the second location of Community Christian Church in Romeoville, Illinois, to take on the role of campus pastor. And as I took on that role of campus pastor, I ended up with a small groups director who was my apprentice campus pastor, and poured into him, and he became very competent and capable, and it became apparent that I needed to step out to allow him to expand his leadership influence. At the same point in time as he was stepping into that role, a number of our staff over the course of a couple years were being sent out of Community Christian Church to start new churches in places like Denver, Colorado, and New York, and Boston, and Detroit, Michigan. And that began to kind of move in my heart, kind of this desire, is that something I'm supposed to do? Am I supposed to start a church? And over the course of praying through a couple years and conversations with my wife and with Dave Ferguson, it became apparent there was a situation, an opportunity in Kansas City to plant a brand new church. And I asked him, am I supposed to be the one? And it became very apparent, very clear that God said yes. And so about 2 years ago, my family and I moved out to Kansas City with 20 others from all across the country, from Colorado, from Chicago, from South Carolina, to begin this brand new work called Restore. And we launched pregnant. So in 6 months, we're going to launch the second location of Restore in Liberty, Missouri. Because this idea of reproducing, this idea of a path of moving from a small group apprentice to somebody who's leading a church, it's something that we want to reproduce over and over again.